Tying baby.
I wanted to come back today and talk about fertility, health, fibroids, miscarriages, different things like that. Really start talking about those tough conversations about womanhood and the things we don't talk about with each other, the things we go through silently together, the things we are afraid to share. I went through a personal, very traumatic story, and I'm here to share it with you today. Go through just what happened, how I ended up there, and hopefully my story can help you on your journey, wherever that is right now, and maybe help you get some sort of awareness just around the topic
Tying
in
baby.
general. So, I had my daughter back in 2008. I was still in college. I was 20 at the time when I gave birth to her, 19 when I was pregnant with her. And, it was just a really new experience. I feel like the experience went so fast, I didn't really get to enjoy it. I was a full time student. I was trying to work part time. It was a lot of factors. I was still living in the dorms. Ooh, it was just a lot happening all at one time and trying to figure out what was happening with my body, the changes that were happening, trying to figure out college and the classes that I had. I was studying one night and I was just so hungry and I was just like, you know what? Something doesn't feel right. So I ended up taking a pregnancy test and it ended up coming back positive, and my whole world changed. I cried, I screamed, I was happy, I was excited, I was terrified, it was a lot of emotions all at once, as you can imagine, being so young. I know there's people out there who've had children a little younger than that, but for me, I just should have expected it, yes. Unprotected sex, duh, right? But still, it was just a shock overall. So, ended up being pregnant, lived in the dorms up until a little certain part until I got a little further along in my pregnancy. Um, the relationship wasn't great. There was so much happening. We were both young. It just both both Sagittarius. Like it just wasn't working, and I think we both knew that. And I think with the whole pregnancy, we were like, okay, well, maybe things can change, or maybe that's what I was thinking. Can't speak for everyone in this situation. So, moved out of the dorms, later had my daughter. Um, the birth was fine. I had no complications. I delivered naturally. I did have an epidural and everything was fine up until that point. After that, I went back to the doctor for my visits and my checkup. I ended up getting an IUD for birth control, and that caused its own complications. It was so painful when it came to cramps, when it came to just my menstrual cycle period, and I had that in maybe a year or so before I was like, you know what, this has to go. So then I ended up getting the IUD out. And after that, I went back for a checkup. They informed me that I had fibroids. And they're like, you really need to come back so we can investigate a little bit further, try to figure out, what's happening with that so that it doesn't affect you having kids in the future. And, I was so young. I was like, no. First of all, the conversation terrified me. So I was fearful of just the answers, period, which, looking back, hindsight, of course, I would have talked myself into going and, facing it head on early on. But I didn't do that. ignored the situation. Years later down the road, I ended up wanting another child and, being in a healthy relationship and being married for so long. Like when I met my wife, I was like, listen, I don't want any more kids. Like, I'm good. Let's just live, our best life. Let's go on trips. Let's, venture around the world. Let's do this, and that. And she was very adamant about wanting, kids of her own. And I just wasn't for it. And she was like, that's fine. And, you never know where you'll end up, and you'll never know what you'll want in the future. So, just always be careful of what you say and never say never. Just at this point in my life right now, that's what I decide. And then in the future, if you change your mind, cool. But that's what I did. We got married in 2015. We've been together since 2010. So we've been together. Well, sometime, let's see, think after 2020, yeah, around COVID, surprisingly, I was like, I would love to expand my family with you. My daughter was with us at the time, and it was just like, why not? We're still young. Yeah. Um, but at that point, I was still in my early 30s. I was fine with having another baby. If I listen, I can bounce back. I'm got this great job. You've got this great job. We can afford to have more kids. Um, like it shouldn't be a bad situation. So I took to YouTube. Hey, YouTube, once again. But I took to YouTube and looked up lesbian couples out there trying to have babies and the different processes. Looked up single women that were trying to have babies on their own at home. And then I looked up donors, sperm banks, looked up IVF. I looked up, my egg, my wife carrying, and different situations like that. We looked up everything. So we found a way to do it at home completely for free. We just needed a live donor. So our first donor for me, we found, and it was a live donor. We tried for about 6 months and I ended up getting pregnant, which was so incredibly shocking. I was so incredibly happy. I couldn't even believe that this one process at home led to the successful, pregnancy. I was like, oh my gosh, we're pregnant. So we celebrated, we cried, we cheered, all the things. I found a doctor out here and went to see the doctor, once it came to a certain amount of weeks. But up until seeing the doctor, I was in a fair amount of pain. Um, I would cramp a little bit here and there. I was showing way much more than I should have been showing. My belly was round, so I was like, oh, okay, everything's fine. Finally went to the doctor, and my first checkup was horrific. Like, it was just so painful. It was eye opening on how bad my fibroids really were. She couldn't even, do the full exam because of the pain that I was in. So I ended up going to a specialist for an ultrasound, and they were telling me, listen, I've seen women with way bigger fibroids carry a baby to term. Everything looks fine with the baby. Like, you look good, all of that. But your fibroids, are pretty large. So they marked me as a high risk pregnancy. I was in there very frequently, visited the women's health center, emergency room here in Greensboro quite a bit, in and out for bleeding, pain. Had bleeding at work that was so traumatic, having to be rushed to the hospital. And all the while, everyone's telling me, like, oh, you can still make it to term. And, by this time, I'm like 10 weeks. And I'm like, like it feels like it's been 6 months and it's only 10 weeks. And I've been in this much pain. But through the whole time, me and my wife were just very hopeful, optimistic, um, and, just hoping for the best. So 2 weeks later, I come home from work and I'm just like in pain. I took some Tylenol because they gave me Tylenol. They gave me some other pain medication to just go through the pain of the fibroids, I suppose. So I took that, I ate and everything, fell asleep, and woke up with, severe pain the next morning, which wasn't abnormal, like wasn't uncommon in the last few weeks. So I thought, okay, they keep telling me, just keep going on all of this. And I ended up miscarrying in the bathroom that morning. So, I didn't know what to do. My wife was at work. I think my daughter had, no, she was asleep. She was still here. I didn't think she left for school already. I called the emergency hotline and they, told me to call the ambulance because at first I thought it was just a clot. And then I could see that it wasn't. And, it was just very traumatic, just very, very traumatic. But all the while, everyone kept telling me, like, you can, it can still be a viable pregnancy. Not once did they tell me that I was in danger or, the baby was in danger or anything like that. So my wife rushed home, of course, when she got there, and the ambulance rushed me to the hospital. And yeah, so once my doctor was able to see me, I was still in quite a bit of pain. I had never gone through a miscarriage before. Um, they don't tell you how much pain you go through with those things. They don't tell you like how much blood you'll lose. They don't tell you what to look for. They don't tell you what's gonna happen when you go home because like I wasn't in pain at the hospital. I would think I was just in still complete and utter total shock that wasn't in pain. I just wanted to go home. I was embarrassed. I didn't want to be around anyone. I, didn't want to see anyone. I just wanted to go home. So my wife took me home, and when we came home, we had all this baby stuff all around the house. So she came in, and mind you, it's like dead of summer at this point, like it's hot. So she came in the house, she got everything put away into the nursery so I didn't have to see it. And she brought me in the house, and, it was just a really scary, scary, scary 24 hours after that. So I always recommend, speaking up for you and something's not right with your body, speak up for it. And don't let anyone tell you that it's going to be fine or I've seen this with other people. You never know. Everyone's a case by case situation. So I was still like, I could still probably have a baby. You never know. Sometimes people have surgeries to remove fibroids. I was on Google searching everything like worst case, best case, um, all of these things, what to eat, how to naturally get rid of fibroids, all of these different things on how to holistically heal myself and try to figure out what was wrong with me. Like, why couldn't I do this thing? And, so many times we blame ourselves in those situations. And so many times we're looking at ourselves as a failure when we miscarry or a disappointment to ourselves. And I think those are uncomfortable conversations that we just don't have with each other because I'm sure there's someone else out there that has felt that way. And if you haven't, well, that's how I felt. And maybe someone will feel like that in the future. And I just want to let you know, like, it's not you. And it's okay. And I want you to sit with that. And I want you to understand that. And I want you to know that. And I want you to see how strong you are for making it through. Because that's not easy. And there's people who go through that back to back to back to back to back. And it's like physically, emotionally, all of the tolls on your body. And it's not an easy thing to do. And I applaud you for making it through. So I went back to my doctor. She gave me options, different ways to remove the fibroids, different options to go with carrying again, what that time frame would look like, and just of my different options. So we got this surgery plan. I picked, of A, B, and C. I picked C, and they scheduled the surgery. It was supposed to be non-invasive, where they go in and they pretty much burn the fibroids out and remove them, and you heal. um Please forgive me for not knowing all of the medical terminology for it. If anyone knows it, leave it in the comments below. Let's help each other in the collective, please. um but they were supposed to remove the fibroids. Well, between the time I see my doctor and we scheduled the surgery to the day that I went in for my pre-op, let's just say shit was just going crazy in my body. I, was living life a little bit like a zombie. Like, I didn't want to go back to work. I didn't want to talk to anyone. I went through a fog. I went through what would be the appropriate term? Autopilot. Got up, brushed my teeth, showered, bathed, ate, repeat, step, repeat, and I just continued through that cycle. And, my wife tried to get me out of the house, tried to help me the best way she could. She was going through it, a loss, and we just didn't know how to navigate that, not only together, but separately, So I didn't want to lay my burdens on her. Of course, we get into a shell of, I got this and I don't need to ask for help. And sometimes we need to ask for help, and we need to lean on those that are closest to us because they want us to. And, we just don't want to be a bother or a burden, and we're not. And we can't feel that way because that's why they're there. So, you know, we went to a water park for my daughter's birthday. There was a couple of kids there, a lot of her family members there. And I was just not well. I thought I was going to pass out. My heart was racing, I couldn't stand up. I had to find a shaded spot to sit, and everybody was like, "Are you okay?" And not only was I not okay physically, I just wasn't okay emotionally or mentally, and I just like broke down crying. So finally found somewhere for me to sit. We all kind of gathered, and everything was fine. And people were looking at me like, "Well, why is she even here? Like, if she's not going to do anything, like, why is she even here?" Even whispering about it. So it was wild. It's fine. But I think, what was it? A few days after that, went for my pre-op. I go for my pre-op. They take my heartbeat. They take the blood. They, take my blood pressure and everything. And the nurse looks at me like, "Are you okay?" And I was like, everybody keeps asking me, "Am I okay?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I guess, yeah, I'm fine." And she looked at me like, "Your heart is tachycardic. Like, you're on the brink of going into a heart attack." And they ran my blood work again and again and again. And they're like, "You need to get admitted right now." So they rushed me down to the ER. They got me admitted. We're just thinking, oh, you're just going for a couple of checkups, like just to get your ops, like just to get your vitals and everything for surgery. Like, you're fine. Like, everything's good. And I ended up having to get admitted and staying in there for about a week and a half. And every day, I mean, they had me hooked up to a heart monitor. Every time I went to the bathroom, I was, sending off all the alarms, because any kind of like activity, my heart would just start racing. Um, they did MRIs, they put me in full body scans and trying to figure out what was causing my temperature to go up, what was causing my heart rate to spike, and they were trying to figure out where I had an infection. So they couldn't do the surgery until they figured out exactly what was happening. They had infectious diseases in there. I mean, they were taking test samples, they were taking my blood every like hour. I don't even like needles, IVs, or any of that. And they had IVs, they had nurses in there circulating in and out. And, it was terrifying. First, I've never been admitted in the hospital um, since I had my daughter. Like, and that was the most. And you pop the baby out, they kind of like monitor you for a little bit, and you're gone. Like you're not in the hospital for long. I went for food poisoning, so I've never had surgery before, so this was like new to me. And some of the nurses just were godsends. Some of them had been through some of the stuff that I had been through. Some that could relate. There was a Jamaican woman in there, so it was like having family there. Like she took care of me, gave me whatever I needed. She, talked to me and told me you're gonna make it through this, and really helped pull me out of a storm. And it was like God sent an angel to be on my floor, and really just help me overall. And just really thank you to those nurses out there who put it all on the line, risking their safety and their health and saving lives every day. Like, it's not just the doctors out there, it's the nurses from the intake to the out to the doctor's office. Like, they are out here literal angels. But yeah, I was there just getting tested and poked and prodded. Well, at the end of everything, my doctor comes in and she tells me, I think you know why I'm here. And I'm just like, "Boopity," like, when are we going to do the surgery? When am I going to be able to get pregnant again? Like, I'm just, still with the goal. Like, that's my goal. That's why I came here. That's what the end game should be. Um, and she told me I needed to have a partial hysterectomy. And all I heard was hysterectomy. I didn't hear partial. I just heard, like, your chances are it. Like, that's it. You'll never carry a baby again. And I broke down. I cried, I cried, I cried, I cried. There was nothing she could say. There was no touch on my like arm that could comfort me. There was no questions I had for her. There was no and all I like all I could say to her was, "Are you sure?" Like it's been like a week, and they've done everything they could from my perspective, to see what they could do for me. And the end result was really just save my life. So that went pretty fast after that. They got me into surgery the next day. Um, it was wild. It was wild. They, rushed me into surgery. They took out my uterus. They left my ovaries, but they took out the tube and everything in between. Um, and I woke up. It felt like 2 seconds later. Groggy. I've never been sedated or put under, I should say, for surgery. And let me tell you, I didn't know who I was, where I was, when I was, any of that. Like, I just was like, I woke up and I was like, it's gone, it's gone. And they're like, yeah, that was it. It's like a factory. When surgery's done, the next is getting scheduled. You're done. So went through that. Went back to the room to heal, and I did feel better. My heart felt lighter. Um, I felt like I could see brighter again, like there wasn't a dark ring around my eyes. Like something literally killing me on the inside. And come to find out, my uterus was 8 pounds. And one of the fibroids within the uterus um, became septic. So, had she tried to cut the fibroids out, it could have leaked all over my body, and I could have died on the table. So at the end of the day, they made the right decision. Um, and she literally saved my life. After that, I had gotten back to work, went back to things as normal, but things were never normal again. And then we just looked into different options. We didn't give up. We knew that that soul, was still there with us. And we just kept trying in different ways. So we tried the same process at home with my wife carrying this time. And I think we did it maybe a couple of rounds, and boom, she was pregnant. And it was a beautiful journey for her, for both of us. And it was exciting to see her be able to carry. Um, she is more masculine in her demeanor and the way she presents herself in public, and not one bit of that stopped her, which was so brave and fearless to watch. My partner go through a body transformation, that she hadn't gone through before, and be able to relate to her and understand and help her through, and be, stronger together as partners. It was just amazing and the most beautiful pregnancy. And I was so connected to that baby, and, being able to talk to her belly and the baby get excited, and then, like just all of the little things that partners go through when bringing a life into the world. But we were in good hands with the doctors that we had, and the birthing center we had was immaculate. To the service that we received, the nurses that were there, were just like all placed in the right time, all divine timing. And I was able to cut the umbilical cord, which was so scary and so exciting to be on the other side of everything. Um, and then I got to hold our son first. So the way he lit up and looked at me and, just looked at me the whole time I held him was just beautiful. Like, I know this voice. Um, so yeah, it was amazing and it was beautiful to watch. And yeah, we're coming up on 2 years later. Like, wild. 2 years. It'll be two in October. So yeah, time flies. And you really never know when you're in that darkness what light is at the end of the tunnel, and, what the end result is. So let go, let God, put your, worries and give it to the divine, and just let it all work out in its own timing. And know that I am saying this, and I know how hard it is. But guess what? Every day, new opportunity. So I really wanted to share my story, the metaphysical and learning who I am and digging into the divine and just taking it day by day. Like, I recommend counseling for any of those. Like, I joined a Facebook group, I looked at all of these stories across America, all these women going through hysterectomies in different areas of their life, older women, younger women, women who've never had a baby, women who've had many, women who are like, man, it's not for me, like there's just all types of stories out there. So it was very helpful to kind of make it through that together, and see that, I'm one of many, and kind of draw on that strength, and know that I'm not alone and that I can make it, and that each day, sometimes it'll be good, sometimes it'll be bad, but or each day, sometimes it'll be hard and sometimes not so hard, but you just got to kind of take it day by day, hour by hour, minute by minute, and live your life, because sometimes you never know, right? I could have lost my life then, and I wouldn't have been able to share my message, but I'm here for a reason, right? So you're here for a reason. We're all here for a reason. Even if you don't know what that reason is, it is a reason. So I really wanted to share the whole story of fertility within my life and how it's come about and how I've gotten here to this point. If you're interested in knowing what method I used, use the at-home insemination with the soft cup method. So if you YouTube that, you'll see other lesbian couples tell their story with that. But now it's come such a long way in the last 4 years that Baby Frida has their own at-home insemination kit. There's multiple ways. Like, there's just so many different ways to go about it that you don't have to go through, IVF or any of that if that's not what you choose to do, which are, those are great options as well. So whatever works for you, honey. And, I hope this story helps. I hope it resonates with you. Maybe you know somebody who's going through it. Maybe you've gone through it. Maybe you're going through it right now. And all I can say is you are not alone. And there's, a community, a tribe, Facebook group away of someone else who's there that can help you as well. So I always encourage find, those outlets, therapy, readings, different things that you can do for yourself, different holistic ways to help your mind declutter and get those negative thoughts out. But until next time, guys, thank you so much for listening to Ty Speak. And I hope you guys have a wonderful morning, night, whenever you're listening to this, wherever you're listening to this.
Tying, baby.